Welcome, everyone. Today we are covering Chapter 5, Activity-Based Costing, often called ABC. This chapter is extremely important because it introduces a more advanced and accurate approach to allocating overhead costs. In Chapters 3 and 4, we applied overhead using a single predetermined overhead rate, often based on direct labor hours. However, in many modern businesses, overhead is not driven primarily by labor hours. Instead, overhead is driven by multiple activities such as setups, purchasing, inspections, testing, and packaging. Activity-based costing helps solve that problem by assigning overhead costs based on the activities that actually consume resources. Before we jump into activity-based costing, let's connect this to a real-life example. Credit cards can be extremely useful tools when used responsibly. If you pay off the balance each month, you avoid interest charges and credit card debt. But credit cards also help you track your spending habits. You can categorize spending into groups such as food, entertainment, health, rent, and travel. That categorization allows you to see where your money is actually going. ABC works in a very similar way. Instead of grouping all overhead into one big pool, ABC breaks overhead into activity categories so managers can better understand where costs are coming from and how to control them. Now let's begin with our first learning activity. We have three businesses, Bertrand and Bertrand PC, a law firm, Schellenberg Heating, a contractor, Valtteri International, a manufacturer. Your job is to decide what costing system each business would likely use. Remember, job order costing is used for custom work. Process costing is used for large volumes of identical products. Pause here and work through the activity. Once you've finished, check your answers with the solutions provided in the back of Chapter 5. Now let's review the learning objectives for Chapter 5. By the end of this chapter, you should be able to identify the differences between traditional costing and activity-based costing and when organizations should consider using ABC. Identify the benefits and limitations of using ABC. You'll be able to identify the steps in an activity-based costing approach. Calculate costs using both a traditional costing model and an ABC model. You should be able to illustrate cost differences between traditional and ABC models and describe activity-based management. Make sure all 6 learning objectives are written in your notes. Now we begin section 5.1. The key question is, what makes ABC different from traditional costing? Traditional costing uses one overhead rate and one cost driver, such as labor hours or machine hours. That works well when a company produces a single product or when overhead is driven primarily by one activity. However, many companies today produce diverse products, and those products consume overhead in very different ways. ABC solves this by creating multiple activity cost pools and assigning overhead based on activity usage. To reiterate, activity-based costing allocates overhead to multiple activity cost pools. Then, it assigns those cost pools to products or services using cost drivers. ABC is most useful when a company has diverse products or services and those products consume overhead differently. This slide summarizes the key differences. Traditional costing uses a single overhead rate to allocate overhead to all products. ABC uses multiple cost pools and assigns costs based on activities consumed. ABC often provides a more accurate costing for complex products and services. Now let's apply the concept. Match each business to the costing method, traditional costing or ABC. Pause here and work through the activity. Once you've finished, check your answers with the solution provided in the back of Chapter 5.